used for support, and they're also used because of the fact that horses generally at home, when they're in the pastures or when they're being worked every day, they're moving their bodies and they're moving all that fluid in their bodies. When they come into our practices, a lot of times we put them in a 12 by 12 stall and they stand for long periods of time. That's why people call them standing wraps. What will happen is horses will pool that fluid on their limbs, especially the distal limbs, and people call it stocking up. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a supportive bandage on those distal limbs so that it's supporting the limb and keeping from that pooling of fluid. Okay? They will also aid in support if there was maybe a surgery done on the opposite limb. Horses will, remember, they have 70% of their mass on the front end of their body. And if this horse had surgery on his left forelimb, it's going to be putting all of that pressure on the right forelimb. So what we want to make sure we're doing is relieving some of that pressure, adding some support to that leg. They'll also counterbalance on that opposite leg in the back. So we want to make sure if you're going to do it, a lot of times you want to put standing wraps on all three limbs that are opposite of that surgery limb. To apply these, we have two different size quilts. You always want your protection first. So the quilt is the protection. Okay. So we have this one that's a little bit longer. Can you guys see that? It's longer this way, or wide, I should say. Okay. And then we have one that's a little bit shorter. Right. I would use this on a front limb, and we are going to use the wider on the hind limb, since the hind limb it's more stretched. Okay. I'm going to apply this to Mickey's right forelimb. So the first thing we want to do is make sure our quilt is nicely rolled. Again, this is the protection portion. Then we have the polo. Okay? There's a bunch of different types of polos. This one I actually like because it's more of a nylon. It adds more support than there's more of a felt type. Okay? This will Velcro on itself when we're all done, so that we don't have to tape them, okay? But you have to make sure that they're rolled appropriately, okay? So what I do is make sure Velcro is out, and then Velcro is out. You guys see that? Okay. And then I roll towards the Velcro. So I'm gonna roll it right with that. And you wanna make sure that as you're rolling, that you keep it tight. Unlike if your toilet paper roll comes undone and you try to re-roll it and how it rolls back and forth, if it's tighty, you don't have an issue rolling it onto the limb. So once that's on, make sure it's clean. Now we're ready to apply the bandage, okay? The first thing I want to do is make sure his leg is clean of any debris. Oh, he's a white horse, so he's got stains all over his legs. But I want to make sure he doesn't have like any shavings, anything that's going to poke him or irritate him. We're going to start with our support, protective layer, and that's our cotton. You want to make sure that any of these creases are right, like on the medial or lateral aspect, right next to those tendons. We don't want to put this right on his metacarpal. Okay, can you see where that would cause some irritation? Okay. We want to make sure we cover a joint 100% and the bones above and below at least 1/3 of the way. Okay, but we never end halfway on a joint. Okay. That'll cause some constriction. The direction that you go, you always want to act like you're pulling the tendons in medially. Okay, can you guys see that from here? Okay, so what that means is that this way is going, on the right forelimb is going to be clockwise, and the left forelimb is going to be counterclockwise. And then I just roll. So I'm covering the fetlock. And I want to make sure my cotton, or my quilt, is even on the top and the bottom. And I'm going to take my polo, and I start somewhat in the middle, and I'm going to use even pressure all the way around for the first round, and then I'm going to cover 50% of this polo every time I go around. Okay, and I go distal and then proximal. So I'm going to hold, support the bandage as I tighten it. We leave at least a ½ inch to 1 inch of the cotton exposed, or the quilt exposed on the top and the bottom. So that there's no constriction. And if you rolled your polo correctly, it'll Velcro on itself. Any questions?